Okay, now it's time for something completely different. What is this, you might ask? Is it a new kind of Ouija board? No. This is my new contraption for my center caps. I bought these in polished aluminum instead of chrome. Because there's no polish thing on the Buggy, I want to satin these down, but I want to do it in one direction. So I made this so I can screw this to that. I'll be able to hit the button and hold the sandpaper. I'm going to do 600 grit sandpaper, and I'll be able to go in one direction like that, and I should have even marks on it is the plan. So we'll see. It's just going to kind of satin them down a little bit, so that's the goal. So let's see what it does. Okay, in theory, I think this is going to work. I'm going to take it to the sink and get some dishwashing liquid and some water and wet the sandpaper and see what I can do with this. Okay, that worked just fine. You can see the polished one kind of looks like chrome, obviously, but now this has more of a machined look, so it kind of looks like maybe it was machined out of billet aluminum rather than polished. So that's just what I was after, because the rest of the car, the aluminum parts are done like this. I just wanted to match, so that's why I went with these aluminum ones also instead of the chrome ones. So I got 3 more to do, and then I can mark that off the list. Okay, there they are. I'm very happy with the result. It kind of matches my spun aluminum gas tank, which is what I was after. You may have noticed the logo on there. That is my logo and the reflective sticker. And I put the brand of wheel on it, which is the US Baja Mod series from US Wheel. And then I just put Hot Rod Devils, Charleston, West Virginia on there. So anyway, these are ready for the wheels now on tires. So as soon as I get the brakes bled, I'll be able to put the wheels on it and drop the Buggy down on the ground, and then we'll be working on the wiring loom and finishing everything up. Here they are together. You can kind of see they kind of has the same look, which is what I was after. Okay, I got my new cutting brake today, so hopefully this one's okay. It doesn't have the little pinholes there for the fluid to weep out, so that's good. I took the old one out and I marked the locations of these fittings to make sure I got them the same since my brake lines, and that was just cross my fingers and hope they lined up, because it's always different. And I made sure I put the same fitting. This fitting was at the same position on the other one and so forth. And they seem to have all lined up. They got tight, so hopefully they're okay and they don't leak. But I'm about to put it back together and re-bleed the rear brakes and see if we have brakes. One thing I did before I assembled it, since I had it apart, these fittings that go through here, there's a little barrel fitting, a brass fitting, and these little pins that go through. When you get these, they don't have any grease on them, so I went ahead and greased it, which I didn't do on the others, but I don't know if it's it may be a self-oiling bearing, but I don't think it is, so I went ahead and greased it. Can't hurt, so it's probably a good idea. Make it last a little longer, hopefully. Okay, to straighten up some of my lines, I bent this a little bit when I thought this one was leaking before I knew it was defective, and I twisted it a little bit more because I thought it needed to be tighter, so I bent that a little bit. To straighten that back up, and some of those, I took a block of wood, and I drilled a 3/16 hole through it, and then I split it, and then I'm just going to take vice grips and squeeze this around it This is a 2x4. You should probably use a hardwood for this because these lines are soft, but a hardwood would be better. Something like an oak or walnut. But this is what I had laying around. I think these lines are soft enough. So I'm just going to gently squeeze it, and hopefully that'll straighten them back up. Okay, I just wrapped it around it, threaded it through it, and I squeezed that through it. So it probably won't be perfect, but it definitely pulled it back into shape. So I'll pull it off and look at it. Okay, that worked. I didn't get it perfect, but I got it a lot straighter, so it's good enough. So anyway, that worked. Okay, I got everything hooked up. They seem to be fine. Seem to have brakes, no leaks. Everything went back into place. I had one little leak back here. This fitting was leaking just slightly, so I had to tighten that. Other than that, it seems fine. I got everything bled, and I have brakes everywhere, so I think I'm good with the rear brakes. So I'm sure they'll need to adjust it a little bit once I get it on the ground, but for now, I think I have brakes. Okay, I just finished cutting down my seatbelt bolts. They came this, I think it's 1 3/4, then I cut them down this size. I cut about 3/4 of an inch off of them. So those are all ready now when I put the seats in. So I'm getting down to the last few little things. Besides wiring, I've got to put the oil in the transmission. Not much else. I mean, the motor should be good to go. Once I get the oil in the transmission, everything else is buttoned up. So it's basically, I got to put the seats in, obviously. But tomorrow I'm going to spend the entire day just focused on the wiring. So we're going to pull all of this out and start with a new wiring harness, which came in. I'm going to show you that. So this is what I got yesterday. It comes with, there's a little book. This basically just covers different things to hook up on different cars, Ford, Chevy, whatever. It just goes through all the electric components to it. And this is basically just a 12 circuit from Speedway Motors. So smaller than the 22 that I had in it. This is a GM part for the GM column, which I don't need. So we'll just end up with that. So tomorrow morning we'll start pulling out the old and putting this one in. So tonight I'm just going to finish up, try to mark some small things off my list and get closer and closer. Okay, that's what my center caps look like when they're on. I do have it on the ground now. I took it off the jack stand so I could do things like put my limit straps on. So now that's on the ground, I had to adjust the coil overs a little bit. Now that they had the nitrogen in them, I had to raise this a little bit, or lower it actually, to get it lower. But I got the limit straps on there. I had to do that so when it was jacked up before, it was below the limit strap, which was too much angle for the CV joint to go in. So now I can jack it back up, or I can do it like this to put the CV joints in. So that's one of the last major things I have to do. So, okay, to get my trans oil in, I just got a long funnel and I put a hose on it and I ran it to the filler. So probably would have been easier to do this before I got all the stuff on it, but this will work out. Okay, picking up where we left off on the last video, we were discussing whether to change the wiring harness or not. We spent a lot of time, mostly Ed spent a lot of time working on this wiring harness, but ultimately I decided to get a new wiring harness. The history behind this wiring harness is I used to have a speed shop, a hot rod shop, and I was a dealer for Speedway, and so I had that harness laying around the shop, but that particular harness was discontinued in 2011. I think because of some of the problems we're encountering. Speedway actually sent me some of their own paperwork on it where some of their engineers went through and tried to look at things and mark things, and they still had some questions. So I just decided it would be a lot easier just to start over with new instructions, with a new kit that's clearly marked, and so that's the direction I decided to go in. So here's the mess of the old harness, and a lot of this wiring would have went away. I mean, a lot of this is, I just put it up there when I was working on brakes, but a lot of this we wouldn't have used, so I didn't need it, but we were going to clip the wires and put it in the box. I thought if I update things, maybe that was a good idea, but I really don't need it. Even with the 12 circuit, I'll have some extra circuits that I could use at a later time. I want to thank everyone that commented on the last video. I was struggling with some of the soldering, which I really didn't show on camera, but off camera I was struggling a little bit. I had some good advice from people. It was great advice. I really appreciate it, so thanks guys. And since then I did a lot of research and I bought some products and I tested them out so I could make my own decision. So I'll go over what those are now. All right, what I narrowed it down to, here's one brand that I bought. These are a shrink wrap and solder connection in one. I'll show you that. These are the crimp, dual crimps to splice a line. And then I just got, these are the female ends with shrink tubing on the end. I've got different size for different size wires, and I have the bullet ones in there. But these are all just crimp and shrink wrap. So that's what I did. So the two choices I came down to were what factories use, which are the crimp fittings, and then these solder heat shrink. So I watched a bunch of videos on them, and it was pretty even on both videos. I mean, I watched not both videos, but I watched many videos, and they all came to the same conclusion that really both of these are probably okay. Here's what they look like. You can see when you heat them up, the solder melts inside there. And I cut these apart. Like I say, I did a lot of experiment. The solder doesn't penetrate all the way through the wire, but it does penetrate a good amount. These won't pull apart once you have them, once that's on there and you let it cool. I saw some people pull them apart when it's hot, but it gets really hot, and of course when it's hot it's going to pull because it's still basically liquid, so you do have to let it cool. These type, I found when I crimped them, if I didn't put shrink wrap on them, with a lot of force they would pull apart. One side would usually break loose, but it was the amount of force that wouldn't be normal, even like pulling it through a cable or pulling it through a tube or something. So even though it would pull loose, it took a great amount of force. But once I found if you shrink wrap it with the glue type shrink wrap, which waterproofs it, then it doesn't pull apart. So, which you would have to shrink wrap it anyway. But this does look a little cleaner. I mean, it's obviously it's barely bigger than the wire, and you can see when you crimp it how good your connection is because you physically can see it. So this is a little bulkier than that, but when I pull on this, neither one's breaking at all. So I think I'm good with either. This connection, because you have to get the pliers in certain situations, might be harder because it's easy to slide this over a wire and melt it. So that's pretty easy, and you have to take your time. I saw a lot of people put too much heat too fast on these and they would burn through them, but you just have to take your time. That's a user error I found. I didn't have any problem not burning through them. You just have to, for the lead to melt, so you just have to kind of take your time. And these also work to splice a wire or to go one wire to two wires. That won't pull apart. That's super solid. So anytime you need to branch off of it, that seems to work just fine. And then the ends, these just crimp and shrink wrap, and this really shrinks tight, and you can see it kind of liquefy in there as you do it, as the glue melts inside, so it makes it waterproof. So these are probably the connections that I'm going to use for the whole buggy. These, I'll probably do a combination of these because honestly I'm happy with both. So I think wherever it works, whatever works, I can do one or the other. Okay, we went through the new harness and we figured out what needed to go to the gauge pod, which is all of this. We're gonna have to extend these same as last time, but we got it sorted out. These are circuits that I'm not gonna use. We're gonna leave them for now, but I don't think I'll need these. I might need them for something else, not as they're wired, but as they're indicated, but anyway. And this is the rear of the vehicle and the front of the vehicle, but it's a Volkswagen, so those things may flip-flop, we don't know. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and extend everything, and we'll do it outside the vehicle this time because it'll be a lot easier. Okay, we're back where we started this morning, but we got the new wiring harness in. We're gonna run these wires through the box one at a time once we know where they're going. I'm gonna mount all these to the back of the box now, but we got the wires coming out of it that go to the gauge pod. So they're all ran and come out again. Some of these, there's probably a couple of these that we don't need, and a couple of these are gonna get pulled and go to the other pod. So we just ran them all together at one time. I lengthened them all at the same length. I just thought it'd be easier that way. So we're kind of back where we were. But there's a lot less wires, there's a lot simpler, and the instructions for this kit's so good, it's gonna be hard to mess up. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this mounted now and then call it a night. Speedway fuse box, I'm gonna have to add a little bracket. I made a little tab right here, and there's a little pop rivet you can see there. I'm just adding a little extension to that so I can screw it into the back of the box. On the other side, I have a little clip right there that'll hold the other side. So just a little bit of modification you have to do to get the box to go in there. Okay, today I'm going to work on my constant velocity joints, get those installed. So the first thing I did, I cleaned up my brake station and turned it into my constant velocity station. So I got this ready and clean. So I'll start getting those and get those installed. Today's all about organizing the wires. I'm going through one by one and pulling them to where they belong within the dash pod here. For instance, these are my turn signals, left, right, front, and rear. So I've got those grouped together. That's where that switch will go. This is the high beam and low beam. This is the winch in and out. I've got some wires I haven't pulled through yet that I've got to still pull through, so I've got those marked. These are all my ignition wires here for starting, and I have a couple others. So I'm getting all those organized. I just want them to be where they belong, and I also have a checklist, just kind of a crude checklist of everything I have in the gauge pod. I'm going through and making sure I have the wire that's supposed to be there for each thing. That way I know it's there and it'll make it easy to hook up. So working through these lights now. I've got most everything so far. One thing I came across back here on my chase light, I have matching switches here that I want to use just because they all match. This is the one that came with mine, and what we have here, this switch is on and off, but then it has a momentary switch right there, and that's what changes the colors. This switch obviously doesn't have that momentary switch in it, so you've got power coming in, and that's what activates the switch right there. These power in and out go to this momentary switch. So what I'm thinking I can do to use this switch is wire this up, positive, negative, so that part works, that'll turn it on. But since I don't have a momentary switch in this particular switch, I do have a horn button, which is basically a momentary switch. So I think I can wire this the same way this is a momentary switch to my horn, so I can just hit the horn button, which will activate the horn, but it'll also change my light colors. So I think I'm going to do that just so I can keep this switch in here. That should work. I'll have to test it obviously before I do it, but basically it's momentary switch, and on and off power, so it should work. That's what I'm going to try and see. Other than that, I'm going to keep working through these and getting them all identified, and then I'll start running wires through the rear and the front, but so far so good. Okay, where are we with the wiring? I've got probably 99% of the wires running to the dash pod. Only thing they have left are the overhead lights. I've got the fog lights, but not the top roof lights. Let's see, so I have them organized kind of where they go, where the switches are. Come out of this pod and they go up down to this pod. Everything's there. Everything runs from the fuse box along the channel there, going back. I'm not going to loom these until I test everything, but I'm getting everything ran. So they come through here, go up here, they split right here. These go to the turn signals. These go back to the engine and the lights. So I have things fairly well organized. This is where they split. They go to the rear lights, the brake lights, and the license plate light. These are my engine wires that go over to this side, then they'll jump over to the motor. So basically everything's ran to where it's supposed to go. Now I'm going through and I'm working kind of backwards. I got the parking, this is a turn signal wire here, the yellow one. But then I got the parking light wire here. But now I'm working backwards. Since I have a parking light in this, and I actually have a parking light here, a side light, I'm having to make a jumper on that to connect both of those. So that's what I'm going through now. I'm going through place by place. I'll go to the other side and I'll start making all the junctions where I need to split things. I need to split this again for this and that. So those two lights get split, then it'll continue around. The front I have loomed already. These are my front lights there. They go through. The winch also goes through there. And then I've got the headlights and turn signals jump back and forth right there. I left plenty of extra wire in case I have to cut it or redo it. I have plenty of extra wire. These are actually a parking light, park lights here, which I don't have. Excuse me, but I left a wire there just in case I need it for in the future. But I've got the turn signal and the lights wired up. So the front end's done. I'm gonna keep making all the other connections, and then I'll have everything ready to hook up. Constant velocity kits are pretty nice. They come with everything you need. I got the one side installed already. You get your axle, your boots. They come with a bag of grease for each CV. And they get the little clip that goes on the end. They come with all the bolts. So, pretty nice kit. Easy to work with. I got the one side in. Now I'm going to assemble this one, and I'll get this side in. Okay, working on the wiring continues. I've been working on the rear lights and the lights up here, the chase light and the turn signals. I got these routed. These are the engine engine lights. They come over here, and I'll work on those next. These are the lights that run to the back. They run along there. I'm going to wrap these in heat shield. They'll be in a loom, but then I'm also going to put a heat shield around them since they're about 2 inches away from the exhaust. So hopefully that'll help. What I've got done, I've got my ends for my brake lights and park lights, same thing. So we got those ready to go. Come across here, I've got a engine light, which is underneath here. And then this is the light for the license plate and the reverse light. So that's my reverse light hookup. And these two are for the license plate and the engine light. And then it continues over here to this brake light and park light. So they run through the loom. I'll loom all this. They run through this channel. I have grommets on those. And I put a heat shrink in there. I'm not going to heat shrink it, but I just put it in there for protection where it runs through those. These lights that I'm running, I had to look because I was a little confused myself. They are park and brake lights, so they're dual function, but they only have two wires that come out of them. They have a red wire and a black wire. So online, and like myself, a lot of people thought that was a positive and a negative, so everyone thought these weren't dual function, but they are dual function. The red wire is actually your brake or your turn, the bright one, and then the black wire is your park light, and it grounds through the frame of the light itself. So in order for me to do that, I have a lot of paint on these on the top and bottom, so I had to pull them back off so I can get on the bottom side of this and grind it down to metal so the washer will make contact. It has a rubber washer on the top side, so obviously that's going to isolate it from insulation. But once I get that ground off, this should be grounded and that should work. So these are dual function lights, regardless of what people might read. And it is confusing. Like I say, I've basically just buried my nose in YouTube and in books for 2 or 3 days and learned as much about wiring as possible. So I'm not going to give any advice on wiring because this is the first complete job I've ever did. I've fixed things before, but I've never wired up an entire car. So it's all a learning curve for me, so I don't feel comfortable giving any advice. The advice I will give is just the planning things out and making sure you have a good path for everything and planning that out ahead of time. That's really came in handy. It's really worked out the way I've mapped everything out. It's worked well. So I've been happy. That's something you should definitely do. I think you can see they wrap around here and they loop around and go up again. This will all be in a loom. This is the connection for my gas tank sending unit. It comes here, so that'll get plugged in. I've also marked everywhere just to make it easier. Like on the positive wires or just where I'm connecting, I've got the red to the red, so that way I know what things go to. Just to make it easier when you're putting it together. It's easy to forget once you get it done. It's just an extra reminder. My turn signals up here, obviously are wired, but this chase light also has a brake light, a third brake light, and I can do turn signals besides the chase. I've backfed those wires down, and they'll plug in down here somewhere because I have a long extension right there. So if I ever change a chase light, I'll have these located down here somewhere where I can easily get to them behind the seat and change those. But other than that, one little trick I'm doing on the wiring, where I have two wires coming through a loom. I want one wire to come out of it ahead of the other wire. So I just took at all and I poke through the middle of it, and then I'll just chase this wire through it, and that'll come out of the loom before this one. So just a neat way of doing it, so it should look good. Okay, so here's what we end up with. That wire just pokes out of the loom right there. I'm also taking, where my loom ends, I'm also taking a little piece of shrink wrap and putting on the end there just to kind of seal it up, make a nice neat looking connection. So anyway, get this mounted, keep on working. Okay, here's what we ended up with. Hooked up, that comes out. And I got it so this wire, when I clock this, I'll tighten it down. It lets this loom match the fan housing here, so it kind of blends right into it. So you kind of don't see it, but I have plenty of extra wire there. So that should work for that. Now move over to the coil and a couple other things. Okay, on my air filter, I got the breather line that goes from the oil filler to the carburetor air filter, and my little knob here that sticks out. It broke out. It's not in there very tight. You can see there's just a little flange. So to get rid of that, to fix it, what I did, I'm sacrificing one of my air hose. These are the cheap ones from Harbor Freight, and I had an extra one, so I'm just cut that end off that and cut that piece off that. I'll drill this hole out a little bigger in the air filter. I'll stick that up, use that for the nut on the top of it. I'll drill this hole out a little bigger, and that'll take care of it, and I'll be able to hook the hose up. So anyway, that's the plan with this. Okay, that worked. I put a big washer. I just had a big washer. I needed a washer to take up some space. I just had a big stainless one laying here, so I used the big one. That helped make this more rigid anyway. So that goes too, so that'll work. It's better than the original, but like I say, it's just something that broke off when I was trying to fiddle with the hose. So it's fixed, so move on to the next thing. Okay, I think that's where I'm going to end this video. I'm going to continue working on the wiring. It's taken a lot longer. I guess not having experience in wiring an entire car, I thought I could get through this faster, but just shrink wrapping and crimping everything and all the different connections and thinking through everything is taking way longer than I thought. I think I'll still finish it this week. It's Sunday, so I'll keep working on it through the week, and I'm getting close, so hopefully the next video we'll see it running. That's the goal. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.